So one of the big worries that I think every one of us has had since the 2019 general election was that Boris Johnson's and the Conservatives' pretty much overwhelming majority at this point of about 85 seats would, well, 84, sorry, because they won one and then they lost one, would definitely put us in a very, very difficult situation, because there is no way, even in an opposition, could do any way significant damage enough to try and stop the passage of these three bills going through the House. Now, currently, the crime and policing bill is one of the big ones, but there is also a new asylum and immigration bill, which is going to cause huge problems, and we'll get into that as well. And of course, the big and one of the probably the most important ones is also the elections bill. That will also cause huge democratic problems here in the UK. Once again, not surprisingly, this disenfranchises over approximately 2 million people and stops them from voting. Like I say, I would be more than in favour of having an ID card system if everyone in the UK gets automatically issued one. And you need that card to vote? Okay, let's go use that to vote then. No problem. Like I say, the ID clauses that are being put in here are being done specifically to target people who do not have those types of IDs. And of course, again, it is being done on the banner of voter, voting integrity, to stop people voting illegally or breaking the law. Again, there were, two? I don't even think there were two. I think there might have been one incident of voter fraud at the last election. So again, it just shows how unnecessary this bill actually is, and is nothing more than an attempt at blatant voter suppression. And again, something that we should be incredibly worried for. So if you are, again, worried about these bills, then please do write to your MP, even if they are Conservative. Like I say, letter writing campaigns do work. So get writing to your MP, get other people who live in your constituency to write to their MP. This will have huge dramatic impacts on the UK for at least some number of years to come. And trust me, all these bills are pretty much the brainchild of Priti Patel. And again, I think part of a larger scheme, maybe in the future, to essentially run for Prime Minister. And Lord help us if Priti Patel becomes Prime Minister. So, on with the article then. So, but before we do jump into that, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, this comes from the London Economic. The title is How Boris Johnson is Altering the Fabric of Britain While You're Not Looking. There's a lot going on this week, beyond the smaller matter of the rather important football match this evening. We have already learned this week that Boris Johnson plans to cry havoc and let rip all remaining coronavirus restrictions in England. And those are the two big bits of news that are understandably occupying much of the public's attention. And as far as the headline grabbers go, Gareth Southgate and his boys are perhaps the only thing which can steal the limelight from COVID-19. That being said, there's plenty going on this week beside the Euros and the anxious interventions by the independent SAGE group, much of which has the potential to fundamentally reshape Britain. Whether for the better or for worse, we'll leave that up to you. But most of them, however, involve Priti Patel, so you can probably guess where we stand there. So the first big one, of course, is the Nationality and Borders Bill. Formerly known as the Sovereign Borders Bill, the Nationality and Borders Bill represents, in the words of the Home Office, the most radical changes to the broken asylum system in decades. Well, first of all, the Conservatives never actually established that the, quote, asylum system was broken in the first place. They just went around saying, oh, the system is broken. Not exactly so, say, highlighting why it was broken or areas that it was broken. Again, it was a case of it wasn't broken, but they just wanted to, shall we say, use the old trump card of, immigrants and, that old card. So, in the quote simplest terms, the new legislation will make it harder for people to enter the UK illegally to stay here. Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, has said that her bill introduced this week is part of her mission to, quote, crack down on vile criminals. Again, the language is dripping from it. Who run people smuggling operations across the Channel, and also made it easier to remove migrants who arrive in this country unlawfully and to punish countries that refuse to take back their own citizens, with a new power to control visa availability for those who enter the UK illegally. This legislation also paves the way for the removal of asylum seekers to offshore centres where they will remain for the claims for their appeals to be processed. Among the destinations currently being discussed are disused ferries, the abandoned oil rigs, and the Ascension Islands, a volcanic outcrop in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, about 1,400 miles off the coast of Brazil. This legislation delivers on what the British people have voted for time and time again, for the UK to, quote, take back control of its borders, Patel said. It paves the way for a, quote, fair but firm system that will break the business model of the gangs that facilitate dangerous and illegal journeys to the UK while speeding up the removal with those with no right to be here. First things first, I can guarantee you, in the future, we will get stories about how inhumane these centres are and how just awful they are. Again, I can pretty much guarantee it. Now, I'm putting in the phone call to future me now. The next one, of course, is the type of, quote, breaking these criminal gangs. If you want to actually break the power of these criminal gangs, then make it easier for their victims to come forward without the threat of, again, being removed from the country, so that they can come forward and report what's going on with these gangs. Easiest way, simplest way to solve it. And not only that, the changes to the asylum system are flat out and quite frankly wrong to begin with. There's lots of human rights groups which have already said that this bill will do nothing but to fuel more and further racism in this country. So the next bill up was the Policing, Crime and Sentencing and Courts Bill. So MPs this week voted through the Policing Bill, a piece of legislation which has already sparked huge outrage and outcries and protest among the public. Among the new controversial elements of the law, labelled draconian by some, is the power that it will give police chiefs to put more conditions on static protests. They will be able to impose start and finish times on demonstrations, as well as set noise limit and apply these rules to protests of down to just one person. Despite the mass mobilisations in cities like Bristol and London to kill the bill, MPs have shepherded it through the House of Commons earlier this week, despite the best efforts of the Liberal Democrats to try and cut out controversial clauses. But it's not just the Lib Dems who are unhappy about it. Labour said that the legislation threatens the fundamental balance between the police and the people, whereas Parliament's very own Joint Committee on Human Rights has questioned its necessity of it, suggesting that there were already ranges of powers to actually deal with the noise and impacts on the rights of freedom of others. The bill would also introduce longer prison sentences for burglars, knife carriers, criminal drivers, and their children who commit murder, as well as changing rules to keep some prisoners inside for longer. And again, we've said this before, keeping people locked up for longer doesn't necessarily make it good for those prisoners after they've been released. And again, we should find more ways, because again, studies have done this before, that if you find ways to punish criminals who maybe do not need jail time, because again, there are lots of like criminals who are non-violent, it's far better for them in the long run and far better for them to reform in the long run if they aren't sent to prison, because this could again start a cycle of them, once they get out, of going back to being, going back into crime. You've only got to look at the data that says it very clearly. Countries that lock people up for longer and more often result in creating far more criminals and a cycle of essentially recarceration, whereas countries that are a lot more liberal have a lot less crime, have a lot less problems with this. Again, being hard for being hard's sake. Again, it's nonsense, and again makes no sense in the long run. And of course, the big one, of course, is the election bill. Johnson has his eyes set on electoral reform too, and the government is trying to push through changes to which Labour claim would give wealthy Tory donors domiciles in overseas a free ticket to bankroll the Conservative Party. The elections bill could essentially scrap safeguards on overseas donations which allow rich British expats, even those living in tax havens, to donate large sums of money. No wonder Keir Starmer's party is sounding the alarm. And again, we should be incredibly worried about this, considering what we have seen already in terms of donations. Allowing this would create even more problems. And again, it needs to be absolutely killed, this bill. This is, out of all these three are bad. Don't make any equivocations which one's like better or worse. They are all bad, but this one definitely threatens the UK a lot more than the other two in terms of like democracy. So the plans threaten the integrity of UK elections by opening the doors to foreign political donations to flood our system. Cat Smith, the Independent Minister for Democracy, told The Independent, "This is all about changing of the rules to benefit the Conservative Party, with overseas donors able to legally donate to bankroll their campaigns from offshore tax havens or luxury second homes. Current rules dictate that political parties cannot accept donations from Brits who have been living overseas for more than 15 years, as they are not allowed on the electoral roll. But the elections bill, which has been introduced to Parliament on Monday, will scrap the 15-year rule and allow any expat to join the roll and become a donor. This is yet another example of the Conservatives bending the rules to benefit themselves, making it legal for rich Conservative donors living overseas to bankroll the Conservative Party." And again, massively huge problems going on forward there. And we have to worry about all these three bills at once. As I said, we can't really worry about which one is worse. The immigration bill is ultimately going to, I can guarantee you, lead to human rights abuses, and future stories on that definitely are going to be incoming. And as again other reports have said, and again organisations involved with this basically said this will lead to basically out and out more racism. The Crimes and Policing Sentencing Bill makes no sense when police already have such powers and don't need them. The police have even said themselves, we don't really need this bill. We've already got the powers. But again, this is being tacked and used directly by Priti Patel to essentially look tough on crime. And again, locking up people for longer doesn't make a lot more sense because again, it costs money to keep people locked up. Shocking enough as that is, it's far better to use other ways to punish criminals, not just using jail time. There are other means to do this to again keep them out. And like I say, we could do an entire video on just that alone, and I think we might have to in the future. But again, I'll have to collect and get some data and stuff on that. And again, finally, the election bill. Again, this will allow the Conservatives' very rich and wealthy friends to basically bankroll the Conservative Party. And again, something of which we should and need to worry about, considering what we've already seen and how much the Conservatives get bankrolled already. Adding that now offshore money creates even more problems. Again, as was said there, creating one rule for the rich and one for the poor. Again, something that we definitely have to worry about for the future of our electoral system. And again, if this does go through, if this bill does get passed, then it is one of the first things that any future non-Tory government will have to get rid of. So, as always, thanks for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.